Hello and welcome to Casually Criterion. My name is Mike.
And my name's Justin. Casually Criterion is a weekly podcast where we are watching through the Criterion Collection in spine order. Chris is not with us again this week. Just a reminder, he's off, doing his play thing, acting. But he'll be with us soon. I don't know exactly when, but he'll be back whenever his play's over, I guess.
All right. Today's episode is Spine number 11, The Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman.
All right. It's a good one. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, me too.
Cool. And if you want to follow along with the podcast of what films we're doing next, if you want to ask us questions, you want us to talk about a particular part on a certain film, that sort of stuff, you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/casuallycriterion podcast. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcriterion. You can email us directly at casuallycriterion@gmail.com. Do that. Before we get into the film discussion, as usual, we're going to talk a little bit about what's on our mind, what's going on in the movie world. And Mike, do you want to take us off?
Sure, absolutely. So this week has been quite busy in film news because we actually have Sundance 2018 going on right now. And there's actually 2 or 3 movies that have actually been getting some buzz that I would like to talk about and officially put out there as movies I am looking forward to seeing probably in 2018, unless some of them get in some sort of distribution debacle.
I think everything that shows up at Sundance usually sells and ends up out there these days.
Yeah, probably. If Netflix isn't buying it, then someone will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one that's been getting a lot of buzz that I wanted to talk about was one starring Laura Dern called The Tale. I don't know much about this movie, and I want to keep it that way for the most part. But from what I understand, it's a first-time director named Jennifer Fox. And this is about a woman trying to reconcile with her own memories of her sexual assault when she was a younger woman. And it's also starring Elizabeth Debicki. She's in a few things. I think the most recent thing that I saw her in was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Do you know who she is?
Not from that movie. Unless she might be in something else I've seen. But
have you seen The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the Guy Ritchie movie?
No, I didn't see that one either.
Oh. Well, it's actually not bad. You should see that movie.
Okay.
Anyway, and then the next movie I wanted to talk about was actually called Mandy, starring Nicolas Cage. And Nicolas Cage has been kind of on the outskirts of Hollywood here the past few years. He's kind of been, I don't want to say blacklisted, but he's not where he once was in as far as notoriety goes.
Yeah, he's a bit of a punchline these days.
Yeah, I think
which I don't agree with.
I don't either. I think we can agree that he's made some really bad choices as far as movies he's been in recently. But man, he can deliver when he wants to,
Yeah.
Leaving Las Vegas is an example of a great movie. I thought Werner Herzog's Bad Lieutenant was pretty good.
I like Knowing.
Yeah, Knowing.
I'm not ashamed.
Yeah, that's dark. That's from the director of Dark City. Is it Alex Cox? Is that right?
Yes.
Cool. Anyway.
No. Alex Cox did Repo Man. Alex Proyas.
Damn it.
It did The Crow.
I'm embarrassed. Anyway.
It's okay. And Gods of Egypt.
Oh yeah. Did you see Gods of Egypt?
Nope.
Oh man. Anyway, we're getting off track, but
yeah.
You should see Gods of Egypt, and we should talk about it at some point. But Mandy, it's directed by Panos Cosmatos, the director of Beyond the Black Rainbow. Have you seen this?
No, I've heard it's wild, though.
Yeah, I haven't either. I've also heard it's wild. I've heard the same thing about Mandy. The only thing I really know about it is in the picture, Nicolas Cage is very bloody, and I've heard rumors that there might be a chainsaw duel.
Like a samurai sword fight, but with chainsaws?
I can only hope so.
That sort of thing?
Yeah, that certainly sounds cool.
Yeah, sign me up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the only other movie that really stood out to me would be Gus Van Zant's Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Rooney Mara, and Jack Black. I find Gus Van Sant to be a director that I'm very mixed on. How about you?
Yeah, I don't know that I like too many of his movies, like a whole lot. Like I struggled to think of a movie of his that like I just straight up love that would like, one of those movies that like I got to watch this once a year, or that sort of thing.
Right, yeah.
But I've seen some stuff of his that I do like.
Sure, and I think that's why I'm more interested than I am excited, I would say. He hasn't really done a movie in a long time that has jumped out at me and made me feel anything, per se. But I'm always down for a return to form. And I think Joaquin Phoenix is always good, and Rooney Mara is always good. And I'm excited to see Jack Black maybe take on something that you don't normally see a guy like Jack Black do,
Yeah, like I think it's fun. You sometimes don't know what you're going to get with Gus Van Sant, because sometimes you get like Good Will Hunting, and I don't know, like the image I've seen of this movie looks a little more Good Will Hunting-ish, but then sometimes you get things like
Paranoid
Elephant
Park.
and Paranoid Park, and what was the one he did about Gus Van Sant's Last Days?
Oh yeah, Last Days.
The Last Days, I guess,
with
is
Michael
the
Pitt,
title,
right?
Yeah, which is a good movie, but you have to be in the mood to watch like a lot of shots that just hang on a single shot for like minutes, and like really, really slow paced stuff. So like, I don't quite know what I'm going to get all the time.
No, absolutely.
I usually watch trailers for his movies to find out if I want to watch them.
So, is there anything from Sundance that you think looks good or interesting?
I'm not too familiar with like the full list, but looking through a couple of like lists of the movies and articles, the one thing that other than the things that you mentioned, because like Mandy did sound interesting to me, the Gus Van Sant one sounds interesting. I like Joaquin Phoenix, but there's a film called Private Life, and is written and directed by Tamara Jenkins, which that name sounded familiar. I couldn't remember who she was, but then I looked up and she directed The Savages. That was like actually her last film.
Oh, that's been a while ago now.
Yeah, that came out in 2007. It starred Philip Seymour Hoffman and Laura Linney.
Oh, geez. Has it been that long?
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't do things very often. Her last feature before that was The Slums of Beverly Hills.
Oh, wow. I remember that movie
like
being advertised.
Late 90s or something like that.
I remember that movie being advertised on the VHS copy of, I don't know, whatever movie we used to watch circa 1997 or 8,
Yeah, but I really liked The Savages. I thought it was good and fun, and well, not super fun, but funny.
Yeah, definitely good.
Way.
Yeah, definitely good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say fun, but
No.
definitely rewarding. Philip Seymour Hoffman and Laura Linney are both really great in that movie.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm interested to see what she does next.
Yeah, all right.
Cool.
I think that's pretty much.
Anything else?
Nah, that's all I had about Sundance. How about yourself?
This being a Criterion podcast half the time, we had the new releases announced for April of 2018. The new Criterion Releases. So we got to talk about that, and I want to more than we have to, but we also have to.
So it's a good thing you want to.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just go with what's releasing first, which is April 10th. That's an Eclipse series, and that is Ingrid Bergman's Swedish Years. And I'm not too familiar with anything in here.
Neither am I, but I guess that's the beauty of the Eclipse series, is that it gives attention to movies that you probably otherwise don't get to see.
Yeah, exactly. And it's 6 films, so, I don't know when I'll get around to getting this one. I try to buy the Criterion ones, and that keeps my wallet empty enough.
Oh, definitely. It looks like 3 of these movies were directed by Gustav Melander. Have you heard of this guy?
I have not.
I haven't either, but I'm looking at him now.
Yeah. But I like the Eclipse series. The ones I've bought the I'm blanking on Robert Downey Sr. one.
Oh, nice.
That I've been watching through recently.
I got the
those are
Sam
fun.
Fuller one a few years back.
I remember when you got that one. I watched most of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I did too. I think I watched all of them, and they're all good.
Yeah, and it was cool to find a group of movies that I knew nothing about and hadn't even really heard of, and like you said, it kind of opens you up to some films that you might not otherwise see. So
yeah, definitely. And I'm sure everyone who listens to this podcast probably already knows that. But if you like the Criterion Collection, you should also check out everything the Eclipse series has to offer.
All right. And the next release date is April 17th. We have 2 films coming out on that day. The first one is The Color of Pomegranates by Sergei Perezhinov. I should have looked up how to pronounce that before we started this, but
you're going to get no help from me.
Yeah. I guess that's Russian.
Yeah, Soviet Union.
Soviet Union, there it is.
Yeah.
So this one I don't know much about. I know it was teased on the New Year's drawing, and everyone kind of called that one out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people who know more about it than I do. So if there's any of you listening now, write us in. Let us know why this is awesome and why we should look forward to it.
And it looks like 78 minutes, so it's pretty short.
Nice
watch,
and breezy, yeah.
All right, and next is Leo McCarey's The Awful Truth, which I'm excited about. It's got Cary Grant.
Me too. And Irene Dune?
Dune?
I know.
Duna?
I think it's Dune. I saw an episode of Mad Men where Don Draper mentioned her by name, and he said Dune.
Okay, well,
so I'll go with that.
I'll go with Don Draper's pronunciation.
Yeah, Don Draper certainly looks like he knows what's going on. Yeah, but no, have you seen this movie, The Awful Truth? I don't think you have. I think we've talked about this the other day on the New Year's episode.
No, yeah, you're right. I have not. I love Cary Grant films. The other Leo McCarey film I'm blanking on that I've seen, but I know I've seen another one that's really, really good. And I'll figure it out one day and maybe bring it up in a future episode. But I love these comedies, and I
Make
love
Way
a comedy
for Tomorrow?
with a good. I haven't seen Make Way for Tomorrow. That's the one I can think of, and that's the one I haven't seen. Did he do Ruggles of Red Gap? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Oh dear. If you can stall for about 10 seconds, I can let you know.
Yeah, sure. I'm always down for a film with a dog in it too, like in this sort of role. Like it reminds me of The Artist, or I guess really The Artist should remind me of The Awful Truth.
Yeah, I guess that's probably more accurate. Yeah, Leo McCreary did direct Ruggles of Red Gap.
Yeah, Ruggles of Red Gap is great. You were in the cinema class where we watched this, right? That one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he had it recorded from Turner Classic Movies because at the time there wasn't a proper release for it, I think, right? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, and I think that's maybe still true today. It's still not, that doesn't have that great of a version out there. If any, and that version is hard to find, the not great one.
Well, that's a shame. I haven't seen any of his other movies, but I can certainly vouch for Ruggles of Red Gap, and that certainly makes me want to see everything else that gets a good release from him.
Yeah, but have you seen The Awful Truth?
I have seen The Awful Truth, actually. That was my first Cary Grant drama, and it's. I was going in expecting, because this is the high time of me being Arsenic and Old Lace, Bringing Up Baby, everything I could possibly get my hands on. I think The Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer, I think is one of the names. His Girl Friday, all of these Cary Grant screwball comedies, excuse me. And then I saw this drama, and it's actually a slow drama about a marriage, and these two people trying to decide if they want to save their marriage, and it's really good. It's really good. I'd give it a shot as soon as it comes out.
Oh, absolutely, I will. I wouldn't miss it for the world. So next up is April 24th, the last release date of April. Two films on that one. First one is Sofia Coppola's The Virgin Suicides, which I know we've both seen this one.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know, thoughts? Go ahead. What do you think?
I think it makes sense. I think Sofia Coppola is a filmmaker that I think of when I think of contemporary filmmakers who belong in the Criterion Collection. There's Wes Anderson, there's David Lynch, there's Sofia Coppola. There's certain directors that just seem to fit with Criterion, and I think Sofia Coppola is definitely one of them. I would not have guessed that this would be the first movie of hers in the Criterion Collection, but yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to watch it again because I've seen, I think, all of her other movies more recently than I've seen this one. And if I remember correctly, I like most of them more than I like this one. So I'd be interested to go back and visit it again. Now that I've seen all her other movies and kind of more familiar with her career, I would like to maybe watch Virgin Suicides again with a new lens,
Yeah, I think it being her first film, it's always interesting to go back to watch a director's first film, especially when you love their later films Like I love some of hers, like Lost in Translation. Somewhere I think is really good.
And this is back when Josh Hartnett had a promising career ahead of him.
This is true. And, I guess that didn't go anywhere. I haven't seen him in anything lately.
Yeah, he was in that Penny Dreadful show that got canceled after 3 seasons.
He was. You're right. I didn't watch much of that, but I had a friend who did, and when I would hang out with him, sometimes he would just have it on like in the background.
Yeah. But Eva Green was great in that show. Did you ever, I don't know if you ever saw any of the episodes, she's the main character of that show, and Eva Green is so good in that show. She gives 150% to her performance, and she's just it's one of those performances in that show that just watching it exhausts you because she's putting so much physical work into everything she's doing. There's a lot of exorcism type stuff in that show. So Eva Green's got to do some crazy acting. She's just got to go
a lot of physical stuff.
Yeah, just go for it. And man, she does. And I think she carries that show for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, Josh Hartnett, Kirsten Dunst, maybe some other people are also in Virgin Suicides. Those are the main ones I remember.
Definitely other people are in it.
Yeah. I liked it when I saw it, which was, over 10 years ago probably.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
So yeah, looking forward to revisiting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I hope it's a sign of more Sofia Coppola coming.
I bet it is. Most of her movies, I think, would fit nicely into the Criterion Collection.
Yeah. I think that's just what excites me most about this announcement, more than the movie itself.
Yeah, I would agree with that, actually, because one day I would love to have a Somewhere Criterion release. That would be really cool for me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and last film is Dead Man by Jim Jarmusch, which I'm sure most Criterion people would say finally, because if you follow any of the Criterion Facebook groups or the Reddit Criterion pages like that, I just feel like I constantly see people
speculating,
predicting Dead Man's coming, and that was predicted in the actually all 4 of these were predicted in the New Year's drawing, but even prior to the New Year's drawing, one of the Facebook groups for the podcast Criterion Now, every time there's about to be new releases, they do a poll on what are you expecting, and I think the last 3 or 4 months, Dead Man has been at the top, heavily favored as it's coming out this month, I know, or it's going to be announced this month.
Yeah. So it's been rumored for a while. I guess people have been hearing through the grapevine that it was coming.
Yeah, I think so. And there may have been some Janus Film teases with pictures of it, or maybe Criterion teased some pictures of it. Something like that happened. So I don't know. Have you seen this movie? I don't know it at all. I haven't seen it. I've heard of it, but that's it.
Yeah, I have. I watched it a long time ago. It's not a movie that jumped out at me at the time. But that being said, it's also a movie that I've thought about a lot since I watched it, even though, if you'd asked me right after I watched it, I'd have said, not for me. I don't like it too much. The amount of times I've thought of that movie since I've seen it for the first time, that's got to count for something, right? I'd be excited to watch it again. I remember the music, the score is really weird. I'm finding out now, based on the little description, that I didn't realize before. Neil Young, the musician Neil Young, actually did the score for this movie.
Interesting.
And that is interesting, because I remember the score being weird and noisy.
Sure, yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the 70s westerns that would have Chris Christopherson do the score, all the music for it, or Bob Dylan.
Oh yeah,
he did Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Yes,
the Sit Pack and Paw movie. So it reminds me of that sort of thing. But obviously this came out in '95, so I don't know.
And then
Jarmusch was throwing back to that.
It's kind of like a Suspiria or something like that, where they just have this bizarre vision from musicians to come in and do score, and then it just ends up being crazy. But Dead Man score. It's certainly one of the things that I think about the most when I see that movie, or when I think of that movie, I guess.
Yeah, I've only seen a handful of the Jarmusch movies, and I haven't been super crazy about any of them. Although supposedly I haven't seen the really really good ones yet, like Night on Earth, or Mystery Train.
Mm-hmm.
Those ones that I've heard you have to see them, they're great. I think the one I liked the best was it Cigarettes and Coffee, or Coffee and Cigarettes.
Oh yeah, the little vignettes.
Yeah, that's probably the one I've enjoyed the most. But so I've been kind of hesitant dig into Jim Jarmusch, because usually I don't know, it just doesn't like click with me. But eventually we'll watch some on here, and hopefully like watching them for the podcast and talking about them and stuff.
Right.
Appreciate them.
Right, because then you'll be forced to think about it, even if it doesn't click right away. You can't just shut it off and be like, all right, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah,
Seen that movie.
I'll have to figure out why it doesn't click rather than just
exactly
let it not click. Cool. Well, that is it, I think, for the What's on Our Mind, the movie news. Yep, that's it.
Does it for me.
Yeah. So I guess we can move into the Seventh Seal. Okay, so Seventh Seal, directed by Ingmar Bergman. This film is set in, like, I guess, is it the medieval times?
Yes.
Medieval ages?
Yes.
Medieval times is the restaurant. It's not set in the medieval times restaurant.
Yes.
Although maybe we should remake this movie set in the medieval times.
With the plague, it could be food poisoning.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, writing that down.
All right.
But anyways, the movie is set in the medieval ages during the times of the plague, and it's about a knight and his squire who are returning home from the Crusades, and death approaches the knight, and the knight, not ready to die, asks for more time and asks death to play him a game of chess. And if the knight wins, he gets to live. If he loses, death gets to kill him. But in the meantime, the knight gets to live. And that's kind of the basic synopsis of the film.
Yeah. Thankfully, death is in no hurry to do the game in one sitting. He's a very busy entity.
Yeah.
So he's got to spread it out. This is directed by Ingmar Bergman, who was the son of a Lutheran pastor, and he actually encountered a lot of primitive graphic art in Swedish churches. He was fascinated by the embodiment of death and the devil, and actually this was inspired by one of the paintings by a painter named Albertus Pictor that actually portrayed death playing chess with a knight in one of the churches.
Yeah, I've read that the story of the Seventh Seal can pretty much be found like on a wall in one of these churches, small churches like in Sweden.
Yeah, which is really cool, especially when he mentions in the movie that he knew that Death liked chess through like ballads and paintings.
Yeah. When he challenges him, Death's kind of like, "How do you know I play chess?"
Yeah, which was
cool. How do you know that? Yeah, and there's a character in the film that is I think supposed to be like that painter or based on that painter. Is that the guy who's actually painting a tableau of I don't know if tableau is the right word, but whatever. He's painting like that church,
right? Yeah.
I think that's supposed to be that guy.
Yeah, definitely. It made me think of that once I knew that fact and was watching the movie. I was like, hey, this is at least inspired by this painter for sure.
Yeah, and Bergman, when he was in college, he studied art history and literature, and during that time he began writing, directing, and acting in student plays, and from there he went on. In 1944, he got a full-time job, his first full-time job as a director in a theater, and that segued itself into film, as happens sometimes, and by 1946 he directed his first feature film, so not very long where he was like exclusively directing theater before he moved into film.
No, and he was definitely very prolific once he got into film, because he made over 60 films in like a 59-year career as a filmmaker. And he also
good numbers.
Yeah, and he also directed like 170 plays. So it appears he never slept. Once he became a director.
Yeah, which is impressive numbers. Which some filmmakers like was it Tamara Jenkins we were talking about? She has made like 2 films over the last like 20 some odd years.
Yeah, definitely.
He's a little over a film a year here.
Yeah, and so many of them regarded as so good and well made and well thought out. It's amazing how prolific some people can be.
Yeah, it makes the task of like wanting to watch all of his films pretty daunting.
Yeah, it really does.
But one at a time, it probably won't. It probably won't feel too bad. But it's easier than someone like Terrence Malick.
Right. Yeah,
Pretty easy to go through all his films.
Yeah, I remember when I was first getting into directors, I tackled Tarantino, and I tackled Paul Thomas Anderson and Sam Peckinpah and a bunch of like American filmmakers, and then I moved on to like Kurosawa, but man, some of these directors, they directed literally so much, and so much of it's just not available in America that I feel like some of these people I don't know nearly as much about as I would like to.
Yeah, for sure. So staying focused, I guess, on the Seventh Seal, it came out in 1957. So he was a little over 10 years into his film directing career, and it won the jury special prize at Cannes, or Cannes, or Cannes if you're Mr. Bean.
I think it's Cannes.
Yeah, I think so too. I just like Cannes, Mr. Bean. What's that film?
Is that Mr.
Bean's Holiday? Yeah, where he wins the trip to Cannes.
Yeah, that's the one with the tank.
Yes. Anyways, let's not talk about Mr. Bean too much.
Another podcast for another day.
Okay, so moving into the actual film now, we just start at the very, very beginning. Like, I guess we go through the credits pretty quickly with silence. I don't remember any music, and then like the score kicks in, and we get like our opening image. And I just want to talk about like the way that score kicks in, because it's pretty like in your face, or in your ears rather. It's like choral, so there's like a lot of like high pitched, like borderline yelling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I remember the first time that I watched this film, I was, it didn't quite click with me. I didn't get it. I was a lot younger. I was very early on in my film watching career, so I hadn't watched a ton of like art films or films that dealt very heavily with like religion, or that had a lot of like religious symbolism and stuff. So like
right.
It was a little lost on me, and getting ready to watch it again, I was kind of like expecting it to be a little taxing to watch and a little bit like somber and slow paced.
Mm-hmm.
But like at first I didn't feel that way at all. Like I actually was surprised at how much I enjoyed this watch of it. And I think noticing like how filmmakers now like use score like more than I did when I watched it the first time. Like I was like, oh, I see what he's grabbing our attention from the get-go, right? Like he's like got you, like, you know what I mean? Like you can't ignore the film now. Like you're not going to miss the start of the film. Does that make sense?
No, definitely. It definitely does. I would agree. I watched it a long time ago as well, and I had a similar reaction, and I think a lot of that probably has to stem from the fact that when you're young, you don't have existential thoughts the same way you do as you start getting older, maybe. At least I don't think I did, right? I don't think
I did at the time I watched The Seventh Seal for the first time.
Right, like I didn't question my faith, and I didn't question my mortality as much. And I think this movie, when you know what it's about and you know what you're about to watch, it's one of those things that it speaks to everyone, like no matter who you are or where you're at, because there's not a human alive that doesn't have these thoughts sometime, you know? And I agree. I enjoyed it much more this time, and I didn't find it taxing at all. No.
It's really engaging and keeps your interest the whole way through. And I just think like immediately from those opening seconds, see like if you're like looking at your phone real quick before the movie gets rolling, or if you're like at all sleepy, I guess, because I watch it kind of late, but like I watched it like with headphones because like my girlfriend was sleeping, and I didn't want to like disturb her. So like I had the headphones in, and like that score started, and I was just like, okay, I'm in. I'm paying attention.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
And so then we move into opening shot of like this hawk, and I don't know, I didn't have much thought on it or much like to say about it, but it felt like a really important image. Like it was just really like striking to me. Did you make anything of that?
I didn't. As ashamed as I am to say it, I remember thinking like this is a movie filmed in the 50s, back when camera movement wasn't necessarily a a hot commodity. And then there's this shot at the very beginning where it's almost like the bird is like perfectly centered in the frame, and you can see the birds moving and flying, but it's like nothing's moving.
It's very still.
Yeah.
Like the bird is like, it's not flapping its wings. It's not like, it's a very serene shot of this bird, I guess. And I don't know, I guess maybe that goes into the sort of like, there's a lot of silence, I guess, in the film, and a lot of like calm moments, and like moments that like really take their time, but aren't necessarily, there's no like action,
right?
You know, like, and just like that hawk soaring without flapping its wings, without like a lot of movement, and almost it being still. Like for a split second, I was like, is that like a fake bird that's just like wooden,
right,
and not moving? But then I think you realize it is real, or at least like it's moving in a real way. But like, it's just so.
The shot
serene.
itself is strange because like it's clearly moving, but nothing looks like it's moving. It's just a unique shot.
Yeah, it was striking, and I kind of just wanted to see if you had any insight into it, or But I think it's okay if we don't. It might be one of those things that comes, in multiple viewings. Which I think this film has plenty of that to offer.
Oh, definitely, and I'm sure there's probably someone listening to this podcast right now who's screaming at their phone. What the meaning is.
Yeah, like, you guys don't understand what the hawk means? Why am I listening to your podcast?
God, you're stupid.
Well, sorry.
Don't even know what the hawk means. Yeah.
Moving from there, we get like the quote that has the title of the film, which it's a long quote, but like the part that has the title is, "And when the Lamb had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for the space of half an hour," which that's just biblical. I looked it up. It's from Revelations, which isn't surprising.
No, definitely. Yeah. Did you want to say what that meant to you?
Not. I don't think it meant anything to me. It felt like a Revelations sort of quote to me, and I looked it up and saw that it was Revelations, but like, it felt appropriate, and I think that it just kind of ties into the film with like the setting of the plague and like the mood of the time, because
right? And
a lot of people saw the plague as like the end of the world because it was just killing so many people.
Yeah, absolutely, and also the silence. So once the seventh seal was opened, there was silence in heaven for the space of half an hour. The silence also kind of ties into our protagonist, Antonius Block, played by Max von Sydow. His arc is frustration with silence, with the divine being silent. He wants assurance. He wants proof. He wants something tangible or something to latch onto. And I think the silence is what's conflicting him so much throughout the movie, right?
He wants, knowledge. I know we'll get into this later, but he wants like proof. He doesn't want to go on faith anymore, right? Like he wants knowledge of the divine, and to get nothing is that silence. And there's a lot of other like silence in the movie too. Like I don't know if I assume that you didn't watch. Do you have the Criterion version, or did you stream this one?
I have the Criterion 2-disc DVD, the reissue from a few years ago.
Cool. I have the Blu-ray of that same version, but I started to watch it with the commentary, which is by some guy who's like, I can't remember his name, but he's an expert on Bergman apparently. But he points out that when we meet Death there on the beach in the opening scene, at first we hear the waves, like it's a very loud part of the sound. And as soon as Death appears, if you pay attention, like the sound of the waves cuts out, like drops dramatically, and we're no longer hearing the waves, and we're just hearing like their conversation at that point, which I thought was very interesting, and I think plays off of the silence in that quote.
Yeah, definitely.
So the meeting Death scene is one of the most iconic in cinema, or at least it's like scenes that I had seen like in film books and stuff before I had ever watched the movie. Sure,
or spoofs in other movies.
Yes.
Bill and Ted, Last Action Hero, stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't even thought about that. the main like kind of I guess like bad guy in Last Action Hero is very much modeled after death in this film.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, 1991, 2, 3 movie. I don't know.
I saw it in a drive-in theater.
Oh wow.
So 90s for sure.
Definitely early 90s. But yeah, so this movie, I think for people who haven't seen it or people who are coming into it, I think they're familiar with the idea of it before they even probably are familiar with the movie itself, right? Just because this image is so iconic, you know?
Yeah, I think there's actually they do steal a shot from it in 500 Days of Summer, too. It's like one of the more recent versions. There's like a little like art film segment where they kind of spoof Persona, and then I believe there is like a scene with him playing chess with death or something too.
Mm-hmm. And then there's some other famous films that film lovers would see in those spoofs in that movie. So that's a fun little movie if you guys ever get the chance to see it, if you haven't already.
Yeah. I don't know. We've kind of already covered what happens. They talk about playing chess, and is there anything you want to talk about specifically from that scene?
No. Basically, yeah, he's playing chess. I thought the first time I saw it years ago, I thought that there's a dead person on the beach because of the plague, right? And I thought that that was his like traveling companion who had died, and he had no one to play a chess game with. I didn't realize that he had been playing the chess game by himself this whole time, and I realized that the second time seeing it.
Well, I don't think you're talking about like the very first shots where there's like a person laying like face down on the rocks.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's the Squire.
Oh, is it?
I think that shot has both of them in it, or something.
Oh, he was just sleeping?
Shots. I think they're sleeping on the beach.
Oh, okay.
Which is a little confusing.
Well,
just because of the vibe of the movie and the
the
posture in which he's laying. Like I thought he was dead too.
Yeah, I thought it was a plague victim, like the one they run across in a little bit. But anyways, so yeah, I didn't realize that basically he has a chess game going on with himself this whole time, and who knows how long it's been going on since they've just got done spending 10 years on the Crusades, and apparently his squire doesn't want to play with him.
Yeah, I don't know that his squire seems like the type of person who would be into chess.
Yeah, probably not.
Not even from like an intellectual standpoint. I think he's like a smart guy in his own way, but like it doesn't seem like that would interest him. You know?
Yeah, probably not.
He seems a little bit more I don't know, a little bit more concerned with like drinking and
like in the now and less thinking and
less in his head.
Yeah, less in his head. And if there's one thing Albertus Bloch definitely is, it's in his head. This whole movie. Yeah,
absolutely. But so the first dead person we do see in the movie, I wanted to talk about that because that scene to me is really interesting. Like, and just like kind of intense. It's kind of shocking. Like, I think it might be the only sort of like jump scare type moment in the movie. It's when the knight and the squire are traveling on horses, and they come across a guy who's like sitting up against a rock, and there's like a coyote hanging out next to him, and the squire approaches him to like ask directions, and the guy's not talking to him, so he like gets mad because he thinks the guy's ignoring him, and he grabs him, and like then we cut to like the reverse shot, and it's like this like deformed face, this guy who obviously had been dead and laying there and decaying and
rotting away
for a while.
Yeah.
Which is one of again another like if your attention hasn't been grabbed yet, like that's another one that like gets you back.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
were you worried the whole time that he was going to get the plague, Squire Johns? I mean, that's what I was worried about the second time, and I don't want to. We'll get there when we get there, but because of the ending, I was thinking that maybe this is the reason that death is around, right? Like, because in this movie, every time death gets somebody, it's always vague. You don't get a cause, right? But could it be
their time?
Could it be that this is what caused it? Is that from this moment on, they both got infected, and then when death finally ends up coming around, it's because this is like what we're seeing instead of them being sick, you know? Or do you think it's that thought out?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Bergman necessarily structures his films in that way of like, I'm going to give you this little tiny.
That might be that might be more of a modern sensibility.
Yeah, of like, I'm not going to just give them the plague randomly. Like, I've got to plant this little seed where people can rewatch and see that, like, oh, long ago they caught the plague. It's an interesting idea. I'm not sure that it's right or wrong. I think it's one of those things you could interpret it that way.
Sure. And I didn't put much stock into it, but it was one of those things that I did think about. And I was wondering if it had crossed your brain at all.
It actually didn't. But yeah, whenever they're leaving, I think this is kind of what I was saying. Like the squire's not like a intellectually dumb guy. Like he's not. He has like sort of profound thinking in a sense. But when he's leaving, then the knight's like, well, what did he say? You know, and he said, well, he didn't say anything, or he says he didn't say anything, and he said a lot at the same time. Or he said a lot, and he said he was quite eloquent.
Right.
And I just thought that was like, I guess like, I might have thought about the plague thing then, because it sounded to me like he was basically saying like, well, he's told me, you know, he's made me think about a lot, and he's told me that maybe the plague is here.
Yeah. Surely,
you know?
Surely if they've been on the Crusades, they'd known about the plague at least.
Yeah, and I think it's just kind of like a very funny, you know, not super laugh out loud funny, but like just a little funny joke of like the dead guy who didn't say anything, and him saying, well, he was quite eloquent.
Right, real dry.
He told me a lot. Yeah. An interesting phrase. That's why I was kind of like, you know, I like the squire at this point a lot.
Squire Johns.
Yes.
So next we actually meet a juggler and his wife. His name is Joff, and hers is Michaeli?
I think it's Mia.
Mia. Oh, excuse me.
Mikhail is, they have a baby.
That's right.
Mikhail is the baby.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, so Joff and Mia and their baby, they're all hanging out, and then Joff is actually I guess he's a fool, like a juggler or actor.
Yeah, they're part of one of those, like...
traveling troops.
Yeah, exactly. And go around and perform shows and like little like funny songs and little like short plays and stuff. Then I guess they would get paid. I don't know who paid them. I don't really know a lot.
I guess people just throw money at them, like tips or something. I don't know. Yeah, but anyways, Joff apparently has visions from time to time, and he's there, and he actually sees the Virgin Mary with the child. And he goes to wake up his wife, Mia, who doesn't seem nearly as excited as he does. And part of that stems from the fact that, you know, Joff fibs from time to time. And I don't take that so much as him being, like, trying to be a liar so much as he gets excited is kind of how I read that. Like, maybe in the past he's gotten excited about some of his visions that mean so much. And he seems like the kind of guy that gets really into life when he has a plan or a vision. Yeah, I think they tend to not believe his visions, right? Because no one ever sees them but him. And the wife does. She tells a story that like one time he was trying to get him to believe him about his visions, and he said that he had seen the devil painting their wagon red, and then later they see red paint under his fingernails, and they find out that he had done the painting. So and he's like,
he lied to try to prove that his other visions are real.
Right? Yeah, and he was like, okay, maybe I lied that one time, but this vision you should definitely buy into.
Yeah, and actually, you kind of want to talk about that, like that scene with the vision and like the filmmaking there, because Bergman gives us the shot of Joff, like we see Joff see something first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't see people walking and then see Joff seeing it, right? Like we hold on Joff for like a good while as he's seeing it, and like his face starts to like have that awe,
right,
like inspired to it, you know.
Uh-huh.
And like the camera's pushing in, and like I think that's a really like excellent technique in terms of like making us want to see it, and like building that anticipation of like, what is he looking at? Like, you know, like I want to see what he's seeing. And of course we see like it's a woman and a kid. And I thought he was just seeing just someone hanging out.
Yeah,
I didn't
some
realize
lady
that
walking through
like
the woods with her kid.
A vision until he tells it later. But also, we never see that vision disappear either. Like, we hold on Joff whenever it's gone, and through his like performance, we realize, oh, it's gone, right? Like, and I just think that's kind of confident filmmaking to me. To like, I feel it feels very intentional. Like, it was shot that way, and like with all the intention to be edited that way. You know, like we didn't get that shot of like, oh, now let's get that shot again, but the people will be gone, and then we'll cut back to Joff's reaction of like, oh, they're not gone. Like it's confident filmmaking of like doing all of that just by Joff's face and his performance. And
correct me if I'm mistaken, but there's not any like clear visual language that it is a vision other than him telling us that it's a vision, right? Like you said, they don't disappear. There's no cut back to where they're gone, right? It just, they just literally like two people going through the woods, and he notices it.
Yeah, and I guess maybe Bergman could be like not giving us that exact answer so that we maybe don't know whether Joff is being 100% honest.
True, and also it's kind of like the opposite of our main character, Block, right? He's desperate for something like this, for a vision like this, and all he sees is death, you know. And so it's just like an interesting compare and contrast between the two of them. And completely in different states of mind, right? Interesting. And we'll talk more about that, I think, once we get further into Block's scenes.
Yeah, and Joff's, like, his visions, they come back throughout the film, and I think we have the payoff of like the way that Bergman sets up like seeing his visions of like holding on Joff and like seeing him react first and like building our anticipation off of that like pays off later. But first we do get to meet as we mentioned that they have a kid, Joff and his wife, Mia. But the kid's name is Mikhail, and they just have this interesting conversation about him, like what's he going to be when he grows up. And I think Mia wants him to be something else, like something other than like an actor or performer. And right. Joff says he's going to be like a juggler, and he's going to be like this great juggler. And he makes the comment that like he's going to perform the greatest trick of all, like the greatest trick that's ever been seen. And Mia asks him what it is, and he says, well, he's going to like suspend a ball in midair someday. Right? Which is funny. And I really like that because, you know, as we mentioned earlier, we've seen the film before and we were younger, and I had this vision of the film being like kind of somber and dreary and dark. And since there's so much it's the plague's going on, there's
heavy subject matter.
But this kind of like really filled me with like this joy at the thought of like the hope of a life that has like its whole life ahead of it, right? Like it's not the knight who's like worn out and like from the Crusades, right? He's had that like affect his personality and like taken a toll on him. Like it's this baby that can be anything. Like the unlimited potential of life, right, is what that scene or in that conversation was about to me. And so like I was just really happy.
No, I agree.
That thought, and I didn't remember feeling that sort of stuff like the first time. And like there's a lot of those sort of things in the movie. Like later on in the film, the knight is eating like strawberries and milk with Mia, and Joff is playing the guitar, and the squire is there, and like you get a happy memory with like the knight, and he's talking about like, oh, I'm gonna remember this.
Like this is enough for me, right? Like this. Yeah. This is what it's all about. This is what I've been missing in my life. Yeah, and
there's those scenes where like you kind of, more than just like being afraid of death, like you get this like appreciation of life and everything it can be, and there's just a lot more like life affirmation and positivity in this movie than I remember.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that maybe comes from the fact that we did watch it when we were so young, and then going back into it, we were thinking to ourselves, "Oh man, here we go." But I think just being older and wanting to watch it, I think definitely helped change like my perception of the mood of this movie, because I kind of agree with you. This time I was watching it, it did not seem somber and slow. And like we talked about earlier with 500 Days of Summer spoofs it. When they spoof those Bergman movies in that movie, it makes them seem artsy and boring and like slow, right? And which to some people they may be, and they're definitely slow, but they're not boring. You know what I mean? And it's actually, there's a lot of positivity in this movie as well, I think, and humor sprinkled in.
Plenty of humor
that gets overlooked or forgotten about, I think, when people think of the Seventh Seal. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I guess we can move on from the wife and the kid.
Okay. Next, Squire Johns meets that painter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They both arrive at a church, and there's a guy painting the fresco, which we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Inspired most likely by Albertus Pictor.
Yeah, and so he's painting this scene, and he's basically setting up the end of the movie, and a couple of other things that happen in the movie with this painting scene. I guess foreshadowing is the term that we all learned in English. But yeah, he's painting a scene of where a bunch of people are dancing around with death in a line, and he's also there's a scene painted of the flagellators.
Mm-hmm.
Is that's the right word?
Yeah, it's the right word. I don't know if it's the right pronunciation, but probably.
Yeah. The people who whip themselves and punish themselves to atone for the sins of man, because they think that the plague is God's punishment. And I don't know. Was there anything with the painting scene?
No, I enjoyed seeing Squire Johns go in there and actually meet him, talk to him, and he seems to get along with him. It makes you realize that Squire Johns, they've been on the road for 10 years on the Crusades. They've probably met several people, but it kind of shows you the different approach between Bloch and Squire Johns, right? Like, when Bloch meets people, he's very solemn and quiet and in his own head. And Squire Johns is very much like, oh man, I've been on the Crusades. It's been stupid. I hate it. It's been terrible. This is what's going on. How are you? Like he's jaded, I guess, kind of like Albertus Bloch, but he's not as closed off from the world. He doesn't seem as indifferent towards his fellow man.
Yeah, well, I think he's made up his mind on religion. Like he's very much Antonius Bloch is the one who's questioning and like, is it real? I want to believe, but I need to know. Faith isn't good enough, especially now that death is like hanging out with me playing chess.
Yeah.
But the Squire, like, I think he straight up does not believe.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it.
That's the vibe that I got, and I think I guess that's something that he felt during the Crusades, but like I think that he thinks the religion thing is a bunch of hooey.
Yeah, I think the Crusades definitely drove the opinion home, probably.
Yeah, absolutely, and we do learn that in this. I think this is the scene where that becomes the most clear, and contrasting to that, we do get Antonius Bloch, who's in the church, and he's praying, and then he sees a priest in like I guess it's like sort of like a confession booth. It's like through that window with like the bars. Yeah,
like this weird stony catacomb that's really scary looking.
Yeah, so he goes and he starts to confess and starts talking, and then as it turns out, the priest ends up being deaf. But one of the things that I want to talk about this scene is Bergman's the way that he shot the scene and informs the audience that something's not right with the priest, I guess. Like at first we see the priest's face, which kind of resembles death, but we're seeing it through a barred window and in a bit of a wider shot. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of like, as an audience, like he gets your intrigue, right? Like, cause at least for me, like when the first time you get a good look at his face in that wide shot, I was like, is that death in there?
Yeah. I was like, yeah. Does everyone look the same, or is that the character that I think it is?
Yeah. Yeah. And of course the Antonius Bloch, the knight, he doesn't see that, right? Like he's looking away, talking.
Yeah. He's in his own existential crisis mode.
Exactly. And then later in their conversation, we see Death's face in a close-up again while Antonius Block isn't looking. So now we know 100%, like, this is Death, right?
Right.
And
pulling a fast one on old Antonius Block.
Yeah, and he even, like, literally, he's talking to him about the chess game and, like, gets the knight to tell him, like, how he plans to beat him, like, what his moves, like, what his game plan is.
Right. Yeah. He's like, I got this plan. I got to stay alive long enough to do good.
Yeah. And then, of course, eventually the knight sees Death, but we've known as, like, an audience. And just telling the scene that way really works. I think it's just, like, kind of masterful.
Yeah, the whole time, especially once he starts talking about the moves, you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, like, shut up.
Yeah, stop it.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so I think so too. And especially because, like, the robes, right? Like, whenever it's the wide shot through the bars, you're like, well, that looks like Death, but also it's just, a roundish guy in robes,
Yeah. Yeah, and it gets the audience involved in the scene, right? Like, that scene could just be Antonius Block rattling off all of this information, because he does have a bit of, like, a existential crisis in that moment, a little bit of a panic, because he is talking about, like, I can't get by on faith anymore. I need to know.
Yeah.
I want knowledge.
Right.
I think it's something that he says, and he's questioning his faith and going off on this, and it could just be a scene of him doing that, but we have that extra bit of knowledge that makes the scene even more deep, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, it keeps it from being just like a regular scene.
Sure.
It takes it that step further.
Definitely. And this is probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. Because if you are like me, you also have existential fears every day, right? So Albertus Block is putting these fears into words in a more eloquent way than I could. Here we have in our notes here, made an idol out of our fears and called it God, That's awesome.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a better, more eloquent way to put it that gets the point across. I even, whenever I was in college, I even made short films about this subject that in retrospect are so hacky and stupid compared to, like, what Ingmar Bergman was able to do in The Seventh Seal in just a 3 or 4 minute scene. Just really great. The fear we all have in our guts when we think, I want to believe in God because it feels good and it feels safer and less scary, but when it boils down to it, this is what I do feel, and that's not always what you want to feel.
Yeah, no, it's, especially if you've spent your life believing, like, starting to have those thoughts and those feelings, like, it messes with you, it starts to, like, everything you've thought and believed, and, like, obviously he was a knight and, like, went and fought in the Crusades. I don't know if knights were ordered to do that or they volunteered.
Well,
but I think he set off like he was a religious man, is, like, the vibe that I get.
Right. Like, well, I think it's the scene before this or the scene after this where Squire Johns meets the guy that actually sent them on the Crusades, who filled his master's head with all the superstition and nonsense about the Crusades.
That's right. Yeah, it's the guy who's stealing from the dead body.
Right. So I think what it was Albertus Block believed so much, and after the Crusades, he's starting to feel like a fool, and he doesn't want to end his life knowing that he left his wife, he led his squire, and he spent back then, what is it, like 1/4 of his life?
It's like
scouring some foreign land he had no, like, business being at.
Yeah, I think he said they're gone for 10 years.
Yeah, so and I imagine back then when people didn't live to be past 50, 45, that's a significant chunk of your life that is just gone, wandering around, and with nothing to show for it. So watching his faith, watching him wrestle with it is really great.
Yeah, and I agree. This is one of the best scenes of the movie, if not the best. But we can move on, I think, if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so they exit the church and they encounter a woman who's tied up, and, like, I guess they're priests and I don't know if they're soldiers or knights also, but the people who have her, like, tied up, they're basically, like, praying over her and saying that she's quote slept with the devil,
Right.
and I guess is basically a witch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the use of this woman in regards to Antonius Block, because he's kind of the character that has the most like interaction with this woman,
Right.
Throughout the movie, because then he goes the opposite direction. Like in the church, he's looking for faith, right, and or he's looking for a sign of God,
Right.
essentially, and to back up his faith. And with this girl, when he is like, oh, she's possessed with the devil, she's a witch, he starts talking to her looking for signs of the devil. Because if he can see the devil, that's also proof of God, right?
Right, yeah. The devil, who would know more about God than the devil?
Yes. He says that, right?
Something to that effect. Yeah, something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, but...
Sure. But I just think that it just takes a really interesting turn,
Definitely, yeah. You got to find it where you can. He tried to go to a church, and that didn't work out. The time in the church is the only time we really see Albertus Block being faithful or religious. He tries to confess, but he never goes to church, really, like mass, or he never prays.
Yeah, we don't see him reading the Bible. I mean, maybe the exception is the end of the movie, which I don't necessarily want to skip to.
No,
exactly,
we can save
it. There's some more religious things that he does, which we'll talk about later. But also the woman tied up is like, I think this is one of the other than like through the Squire, this is one of the first times we get like a real sense of like Bergman's view on religion. I think, or at least like the bad that religion can cause, like the evil that it can cause. Because like I think, now we can obviously look back at times where they were like, these women are witches, we must burn them alive or like drown them in a lake, as like barbaric.
Right, and also like I think it's the scene right after that is the only other kind of view of religion through other people. The flagellators.
Yeah, the parade.
It almost seems like his view of organized religion is very negative. Like the actual institutions, like when you see lots of people following the rules, and doing things, they're usually doing something that's not painted in a flattering light, like burning a girl or walking through the streets and whipping yourself. And neither of those things are played as smart things or noble things, or they're not played as right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, not at all. Like you get the sense that like Bergman really thinks these like acts are either just like pure like evil and wrong, or just like really
ugly.
Idiotic, I guess.
Yeah, silly, like, stupid, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, and I think he does that with the way that it's shot and the editing and the sounds, like this. You can't ignore like the people like screaming, sort of like or like kind of like moaning. I think there's like this weird soundscape to it all that like it makes you feel uncomfortable. Like you certainly aren't in the boat of like, look at these brave people out here like whipping themselves for mankind to like atone. Right, you get the sense of like, look how awful this is.
Yeah. Also, and they interrupt the play, right? That Joff and Mia are putting on. So not only this is Joff seems like the most humble and happy and the guy that we would all want to be in this story, right? We would all want to be Joff and not Block, most likely.
Yes.
Happy, confident in your place in the world, faithful. He's, I would argue, portrayed as like the guy that you would want to be, like the optimum guy, the family man, loves God, loves the Virgin, loves the child, loves his wife, etc. And he's an actor. And then these people, the flagellators, interrupt the play with their religious nonsense, and it kind of interrupts I don't know. Do you think there's anything? Do you think there's anything to that? Right, like Joff, the actor, putting on the play, giving people an escape from all this terribleness and giving them joy, and then the religious people come through, whipping themselves and bringing everyone down, and trying to make sure that no one has any fun.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something. I think that's it. That's what there is to it. Is that they're providing this escape, this like these kind of silly songs that are and goofy plays and with goofy makeup on that's designed to make people laugh, which is, probably something that people need,
especially then.
And then to have like that's interrupted by this like just this horrendous parade of like old men like carrying enormous wooden crosses that are undoubtedly like destroying their backs.
Right.
And people getting whipped and people whipping other people, like, and also I think it's just like putting them up next to against each other, like the juxtaposition, like accents. It's one of those things that makes it seem even worse, right? Like the accents, like how bad this is,
right?
And how Bergman views it.
Yeah, certainly. So the next scene we have Joff actually being confronted by the same man whose name I can't remember, or who sent Squire John's master and Antonius Block on the Crusades.
It starts with an R. I can't remember his name either. It's like
right.
Rabal.
It's that guy, and also a guy whose wife ran off with one of the actors. And what they're doing is they're basically just being ugly and terrible people, and they decide to take the anger of the wife running away out on our good buddy Joff, who's just a good dude, and they make him dance on the table and kind of, I guess, basically torture him a little bit, right? They nothing permanent, but they definitely are being dicks, and Joff doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, well, the one guy whose wife ran away with an actor, so when he finds out that Joff is an actor. And then he's angry at him, right? And
sorry, that was important.
Yeah, and there's a bit of there's like the shadow of like flames on the wall behind him. So I think that there's something in this scene, and I don't quite have like a full complete thought to put together with it, but there is an echo in this scene of like the scene that happens later with like the witch burning.
Oh, nice! I didn't catch that.
They have sort of they're shot kind of in a similar way, like the camera's just a little bit like it's a little bit of a low angle looking up on both the witch and Joff, and you have this sense of flame because there's not really any flames, I think, in like the witch burning scene either. It's a lot of smoke,
right?
And I think that might just be because of the low budget of the film.
Definitely, and actually, the reason I wanted to bring it up is because Squire Johns actually runs back into the guy who sent them on the Crusades. And decides to carve his face up.
Which he promises to do if he sees him again, like the first time that he runs into him.
Mm-hmm, exactly. It's just, I remember when that happened, he's like, I told you what I was going to do. And it was just a lot darker and more violent than I thought it would be. And I just remember thinking like, oh man, holy crap.
Yeah. It's intense.
Don't send people on crusades knowing it's bullshit. They'll come back and get you.
Yeah. Solid advice, and you heard it here on Casually Criterion first.
So the next scene is actually Albertus Block running into Mia, Joff's wife, and he sits down to have a conversation with her. And this is kind of the scene, this is probably my second favorite scene in the whole movie besides the confession scene. And this is where Albertus Block basically just meets Joff's family and kind of meets the way happier people can live. This is how you can live if you don't dedicate your whole life to crusades and being a knight and religion. You can actually have a happy life. Joff comes back after his intense encounter that Squire Johns saves him from. He starts playing music, and they feed Albertus Block some strawberries and some milk. He starts to have some happy memories that he wants to try to hold on to. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think this is one of the only times we see him smile in like the whole, if not the only scene where we actually see I think it smile.
Probably is, definitely.
Yeah, maybe when he finally gets back home in the end and sees his wife, but I don't think he smiles then either. I think it's kind of a different. I don't know what that means necessarily, but
it just means he really likes strawberries more than his wife.
For sure. But yeah, this scene, as we mentioned earlier, along with like the scene with the baby, it's one of those scenes that just feels very life affirming and like kind of this, like, like these memories are what matters. These memories are the things that you're going to want to hold on to and like live in these moments and enjoy them. And so just in the midst of this movie, like those scenes like really stand out and like make me happy.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's good to see Albertus Bloch realize that like maybe connections and human connections and family can give him what he's lacking by himself on the road, and maybe it makes him look forward to returning home a little more. I don't know, with his own wife.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the scenes that keeps the movie from being like bleak and dreary, because if we did follow this Knight character who never smiled and was like constantly in like existential dread and on the verge of losing in chess to death, like these kind of moments and seeing him happy, and having a happy memory that like, because I think he doesn't seem to question as much after this, right? Like, well, he kind of settles down. Like he's not like he was in the confession scene. Like he kind of has something that makes him feel better, at least to me.
But there is a scene after this where he actually comes up to the girl who is burning, and he asks her again to try to like basically conjure up Satan.
Yeah.
So he's not giving up. He's just he's getting like a little respite from his existential mind.
Yeah, maybe it's just temporary and lasts for a little while. Because you're right that he does go back to like his looking for signs of God or the devil, whichever one.
Right, and maybe that's the point, right? Because in that scene with the strawberries and the milk, he even says, he's like, I'm going to remember this. This will be enough for me. Yeah. And then, maybe within a couple scenes, it's not anymore, Maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I think, or at least if you see something in that, I think it's definitely.
I think so.
Right.
I think so too. I think to me, it kind of says that okay, you can get enlightenment from time to time, but that doesn't matter whenever the darkness starts to creep up inside of you. It's still going to happen, if it's prone to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. If we move on from there, we have the guy whose wife ran away. Him and the knight and the squire and the whole troop run into that guy's wife and the actor from the troop who had like run away with her in the woods, and we have this kind of funny encounter like between the guy whose wife ran away, who I believe he's like a blacksmith or a smith.
Blacksmith, yeah.
So I'm just going to call him a blacksmith, so I don't have to say the guy who ran away with, or whose wife ran away every time. But anyway, so the smith and the actor, they have this funny scene where the smith wants to kill him, and then the actor kind of is like, yeah, you're right, you should kill me. And the smith is like, well, I can't attack you if you don't attack me. You have to defend yourself.
Right.
And the guy's like, nope, you got to kill me. That's it. It's the only right thing to do. And eventually he like uses like a fake knife, like a prop knife, and stabs himself and pretends to die. And of course Joff knows that it's a fake knife and that he's pretending, and Joff is like, well, look, he's dead, let's go. No need to investigate. He's extraordinarily dead. No
need for any more violence. Let's move on.
Yeah. So then they leave that guy, and of course when everyone's out of sight, he gets up and removes like his like fake actor beard.
Thank God, because that beard was so gross looking the whole time.
It was.
And
yeah.
I just remember thinking, why does this girl want to be with this man who has the worst beard I've ever seen?
Yeah, absolutely. And then that guy, he's just kind of relieved. I don't think he decides he's going to climb a tree. I don't really know why.
Hey man, whenever you've just escaped a fight from someone whose wife you stole, that's what you do.
Climb a tree?
Yeah, you just climb a tree when you're done.
I've never escaped from a man whose wife I've stolen.
Well, when you do,
Yeah, I'll just
Look
look for a tree. Yeah, absolutely. So then Death shows up and starts sawing down his tree, and of course the actor realizes what's going on and realizes that it's Death and like begs for his life, and like this whole scene's kind of funny to me.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like one of those. No matter what you do, you can't talk your way out of this.
Yeah, it's sort of like the dryness of it and like Death's demeanor in it. Like he's just kind of sawing, and the guy's like, "Wait, like you mean I get to? I'm gonna have to die? Like, but I have a performance." And he's just like, "It's canceled."
Yeah, doesn't.
He's like, "Well, what about my actor's contract?" And he's like, "That also canceled on the count of your death." He's just sawing and like doesn't like break his motion, and like it's just very nonchalant from Death. And I don't know, this scene was really funny.
It's almost like a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yes.
Like scene.
Yeah, it's very cartoonish. And adding to that, which I just thought this weird touch, which I learned was not planned, but like he saws the tree down, and we stay on like the stump of the tree, and you know just assume that the guy dies off screen, and then a squirrel hops up onto the stump and just is like hanging out being a squirrel.
Yeah.
Which is funny. I think that's almost like a cartoonish touch, but apparently that was not planned at all. Like that just happened.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I was like sitting there trying to read into it.
Yeah. What does it mean? Like, reincarnation?
While watching. Yeah, exactly. I was like, is it like where there's death and a life happens, or we need to like see life?
Yeah.
Not that it was a baby squirrel, but like we need to see life. Like it's nature.
It's not a baby squirrel, so that doesn't even make sense. It's like so whenever you die, squirrels.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like sitting there trying to read into it and think about it, and you probably could, but I was looking it up, and apparently it just happened. So like, I love a good story like that of like, the one that I always love to tell is the someone asked like Kurosawa once, like he got to ask Kurosawa like a question in like a conference or a press conference or something like that, and his question was like, I got to know why you framed like this shot in your film that way. It's like my favorite shot of yours or whatever. It's so good, it's beautiful, but like what made you choose like that composition? And Kurosawa was like, well, I was like shooting a samurai movie, and if I had panned an inch to the left you would have seen an airport, and if I had panned an inch to the right you would have seen a factory. So
this is the sweet spot.
That was it. And I just think that those kind of stories are really funny, and like for all the reading sometimes you want to do into a film, like sometimes things just happen. Yeah,
just more practical than anything.
And it's beautiful, and it's something that I love about film. Like that it doesn't make me think less, or like maybe there's not much to it. It's like those kind of stories are like really just beautiful to me. I like it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so from happy squirrels, I think the kind of big next big thing that happened for me was the burning of the witch, which we've already kind of talked about a little bit. It's the same witch that the knight meets outside of the church. They're bringing her to the bonfire and getting it all set up. And while they're doing that, the knight goes and talks to her. And again, with even more desperation, I think he's trying to look into her eyes and
get some answers.
Yeah, find some proof.
What do you know?
Yeah.
But she doesn't know anything. She's crazy. So he does the humane thing and gives her some kind of like weed or something, that like some kind of plant that like helps kill the pain. Yeah. Yeah. Which is a noble thing to do, because it looks like she's not going to have a very fun time.
No, definitely not. And I guess this is one of those other scenes where it's just like you're watching it and you're just like, why people, like, why would you ever believe this? Like you almost can't believe that this is a real thing that people used to do,
Yeah.
Like,
that we're
in the name of
that
like
terrible to each other.
In the name of like metaphysical religion type stuff, like it just seems so horrible. And again, I think that's Bergman making us feel that way and like letting us know how he feels. So I don't know, anything else with that scene that you want to talk about?
Nah.
Yeah.
Not really.
Cool.
So next we actually have Rival, I believe is his name, the man who sent them on the crusade to begin with, and who got his face cut by Squire Johns later. He actually comes back through the woods and approaches our group, but this time he is sick with the plague. So he does not come any closer. But the woman that Squire Johns saved from him earlier in the movie wants to have compassion and bring him some food and water. But they have to pretty much tell her, don't do it. That's bad.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about her much, but yeah, the Squire does save her, and she kind of joins in, and she's kind of here and there along the journey, and she actually like doesn't talk pretty much the entire movie.
No.
And she's a really interesting character to me because like I think we get the hint that when Squire John saves her, it's because this guy Raval is gonna like rape her.
Yeah,
is the suggestion, right?
Right.
And even though it's the guy who was gonna rape her, and now he's dying of plague, like she of most people has like all the reason to not want to help him, and she does, right?
Or she wants to.
Or yeah, she wants to. Yeah, she does. She goes to help him, like bring him water, and I just think that says a lot about her character. That like she still wants to help this guy.
Right. Yeah, she's still thinking like, I can't let a man go on suffering if I have the means to like aid him and alleviate any kind of suffering. It doesn't matter if he's like a murderer or a rapist who I know, given the opportunity, would not treat me well. It still says a lot about her character that she can't stand to just leave someone suffering like that.
Yeah. So I like that scene in that moment a lot.
Yeah, definitely. It gives you we just had a couple scenes of the ugliness of humanity, so it's nice to see the good in it too.
Yeah, way to go, Bergman. Way to not be as dreary and depressing as people kind of think that he is. Yeah.
After that, Albertus Block and Death are playing chess one last time, and Joff and his, actually I don't think his family sees it, but just Joff actually sees Death playing chess with Albertus Block, and he's the only one that sees it. And I guess this whole time they'd assumed he'd just been playing chess by himself on their journey. But this is, I guess, the first time that anyone besides Albertus Block sees Death. And this is the second vision he's had, I guess, since the first time he saw the Virgin Mary.
Yeah. And this is when we know that he actually does see these things for a fact.
Right. And so they decide they need to get out of there. And this is the way I looked at it. So it looks like Albertus Block sees them trying to leave.
Yes. And
he wants to make sure they can get away. So he like messes up the chessboard, like knocks it over. And and then he puts it all back together and gives them time to get away. And then right after that, basically Death wins, right? He gets him in like checkmate, and he's like, all right, next time I see you, time's up, basically. Did you have time to like do anything good? And I guess because Albertus allowed them to get away, Joff and his family, he was finally able to do some good, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's it. I think before Block knocks over like the pieces, Bergman does give us not Bergman. I'm sorry. Death does say something like that you're going to be in mate in like 2 moves or something like that. Like we do get the sense that he's got him. Like
he's
Block
wrapping it
lost.
up.
Block knows he's lost. So I think that there's a ambiguity to him knocking over the pieces. I think that there's a suggestion that he might be cheating, and I think that your interpretation is right. I think when you put together all the pieces of the scene that they're trying to escape, I think he is more of just like trying to keep the distraction up so that Joff and Mia can get away. Mm-hmm. But I think like on the surface, it looks like he's just trying to cheat, right? Right.
He's just getting hopeless and freaking out.
Yeah, but I do think there's more under the surface, and I think it's exactly what you said. And it's the knight, finally doing something and noble before he dies, and
something he can feel proud of.
Yeah, which is very nice. So, Joff and Mia they're riding through the woods, and it starts to storm pretty bad, and they eventually end up like stopping and just kind of taking cover in their wagon. And we move on to, I guess we don't really see what the knight and the rest of the people do, but eventually we catch back up to them. It's not storming, and they've arrived at the knight's castle.
Yeah, they finally made it.
Yeah.
And he decided to bring everyone he met along the way.
Yeah. So it's that at this point now we have the knight, the squire, the girl that doesn't talk, who the squire saved, the smith's wife.
And then
is that it?
Block's wife is there once they arrive.
She's there once they arrive.
And apparently all the servants ran away.
Yeah, so it's just her.
Which, can you imagine how scary that would be, just to like live there for years in a castle by yourself, waiting for your husband who might come back?
Yeah, he might come back and he might be dead, and I don't know how long it would take news of that to get to her, but yeah, it's got to be pretty lonely. I feel like once the plague starts showing up, you might feel okay that there's not that many people around. Yeah,
and that you have a castle that you can lock yourself inside of.
Yeah. So at that point, it may be a little bit. The outside may be scarier than the inside.
That's probably true.
It's like Cloverfield 10 Lane or whatever that movie's called. 10 Cloverfield Lane. Yeah. Anyway, so they go into the castle, and the knight and his wife reunite, and they're all sitting around a table, and the wife is reading from Revelations, which is a perfectly cheery thing to do.
Yeah, I imagine in the Middle Ages, though, what else do you have to read?
Yeah. It just seemed like, we're finally on this journey. We can hear, we're safe. We can lock ourselves in here. We can, relax. Yeah. And then let's lighten the mood with Revelations.
Yeah, let's lighten the mood with the Old Testament.
Revelations is New Testament.
Whatever.
It's the apocalyptic book of the Bible, so it's just all about the end times and the trouble the world's going to be in once the Antichrist comes back or takes over the world, and all of that stuff. So it's pretty dreary and scary to some people. So during this, there's a knock at the castle door, and the squire goes to answer it. And the girl who doesn't talk a lot, it almost seems like she knows that it's something bad coming for them. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
Like she knows.
She definitely knows.
Yeah, that this is it. We're about to die, and our death is coming. And she stands up, and there's a shot of like a close up of her and the window behind her that has like a little bit of daylight coming through it. And she turns and looks at the window, and when she does, that light in the window starts to brighten and like grow more intense, which I think what I read that as is like she's knowing that like death is coming, and to her that she's just looking forward to heaven, right?
Okay, yeah.
Like, and so like people say like walking towards the light as you're dying, and that sort of thing, and like the knight, for example, when he's encounters death, like he's afraid and wants more time, and everyone else we've seen encounter death to this point, like the actor when he's sawing down the tree, he's like, I need more time, I've got this show. I think she's embracing it. She's like, here it is, it's finally, I can go into the light up to like a better place, like heaven. Right. And I don't know if I am reading too much into that.
No, I mean, that makes sense. I don't have a better reading.
It may have been just a cool lighting trick that Bergman thought was neat.
Nah, I would say definitely. I think what you said makes a lot of sense.
And I think it makes sense for her character to be like not afraid of death, because she's obviously a good person. We get that sense when she tries to help the guy, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there's something, her not talking, there's something about someone who doesn't say a lot that seems kind of noble. In a way. Right.
Well, it almost seems like if they don't talk a lot, they're almost like more keen to what's going on. It's almost like they have like they're more knowledgeable about things, because like
that's a better way to put it.
What they lack in voice means that they're more perceptive about the world around them, or something like that. Like you could learn a lot from this mute person, or something kind of like that.
Yeah, and she definitely has that. And the squire comes back, and he says no one was there. But she knows. I think
Albertus Block knows too.
I think so too. And so they all kind of turn back to the table, and then Death appears in the hallway to us, to the audience first, right? So then we know it's him. But and what I think is interesting is the first person who turns around and realizes that death is there is that girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Followed by the knight, and then I think everybody else. That girl is so interesting to me. Like that, like she knew she had this like sense. There's that she gets that whole scene with the light. She doesn't say anything the whole movie, and she's the first to see death, right? Like I don't necessarily know I don't know if that just goes with like the idea that she knows more than everybody else,
right?
I don't know what more to read into that, like her seeing death first than that.
Yeah, I don't know. And the thing is, we don't actually know what the actual literal causes of all their deaths are, So it could be that the storm just got so bad they just somehow died. It doesn't really matter, I guess. But I like to think that means she was the first one to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the order in which they see him is also the order amongst them that they die. I think would be like an interesting way to look at it, which I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that until I was actually looking up something about the scene. So I guess we'll move quickly, I guess, through the scene where they all see death. But like, there's a couple of like the mute girl and the knight's wife, both look at death, and when they see him, and they both have this sort of like awe-inspired reaction to him, right? Like they both just
right.
They say stuff. I can't remember exactly what they say, but they might say something to him, and the knight is he starts praying like immediately, like he's in the background, but kind of behind everybody, like it's almost like he's panic praying, right? Which is I was gonna say, like we talked about earlier, like he doesn't really do much religious, but like when he knows death is there and he's lost the game,
yeah,
like he starts praying hard.
No room for doubt anymore.
No, and then the smith and his wife, like I don't know what they say. They're not quite as awe-inspired as the knight's wife and the maid, or the quiet girl. And then the squire, he kind of starts mocking death, basically, right? Mm-hmm. Like in a sense, he's like, he's not afraid of death at all, like the knight. Like he's kind of the opposite of the knight's reaction. He's like, yeah, it's time to go, but like, we need to, as long as we're here and we're breathing, like let's enjoy it, or like let's live. We're alive. Because I don't remember. I wish I remember exactly what he said.
Yeah, no, it's something similar to that. You're not far off.
So yeah, and then we move on to see Joff and Mia wake up, right? And is there anything else you want to talk about actually with that scene with death?
No, man, I think we covered it.
Okay. So yeah, we see Joff and Mia, and Joff has his like third and like final vision of the movie, right? He sees the dance of death, right? He sees all the characters dancing with death on the hillside. Right. I don't know. What do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
I have stuff to say about it, but I guess I feel like I've been talking for a bit. So.
Sure. So when he sees the dance of death going on, this is, I guess, his third vision, but it's like his second vision of death. The first vision was of Mary and the child. So I'm wondering if these visions are going to start Joff down a darker road, right? Like we've seen in the movie what he acts like when he has his good visions. But this vision is something else entirely and much darker. And he also knew those people.
Yeah.
Earlier in that day, or the day before, or whatever. So I'm wondering if seeing this image of the death dance and everyone he just got done spending time with, I wonder if that's going to have some kind of impact on his outlook on life and his positivity on the world, and maybe it'll end up making him a little bit more like Block.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it's pretty dreary, I think, and I don't know. I didn't feel any sort of dreary feeling like that when the movie ended, and I don't know if it's because after he's talking about the vision, his wife is just like, oh, you and your visions,
right,
and brushes it off, and like then they leave. And it's almost like he may be like feeling the way that you're saying, and then once his wife with like the kid comes back and like snaps him out of it, like he kind of I'd like to think that he just like having the wife and kid there like keep him from
slipping down that way,
from going there. Yeah, like kind of bring him back to like reality, like his normal Joff-ness.
Yeah, I like to think Joff's still out there having visions of virgins and being happy.
Yeah, that's at least like the optimist in me wants to believe that. But something that that's kind of what I thought like when I finished the movie. But as I was looking things up about it, I did not catch this either when I watched the movie the first time or this time, until I went back and rewatched the scene. But not everybody that was in that room with Death is in the dance with Death.
Oh, really? Who's missing?
Yes, the knight's wife and the mute maid, the mute girl, are not in that dancing because he names off everybody who is in there.
Oh, interesting. And didn't you say they were the first ones to notice him?
The quiet girl was. Then the knight, not the knight's wife. The knight's wife noticed as with everyone else.
Okay.
But the quiet girl was the first to notice him. But I went and rewatched that whole scene where like Death shows up, and this is where I picked up on a lot of this stuff. Is that like the quiet girl is very respectful towards Death, right? And she's looking forward to it. And the knight's wife, who still is obviously religious because she's the one like reading from like Revelations, and she's very respectful towards Death. And everyone else kind of isn't. They're all like kind of panicking or, mocking him in the sense of the squire.
Or trying to cheat at chess.
Yeah. And the other, and so those two that are very respectful like live, right?
Interesting.
And which I think is interesting. And there is actually one extra person in that dance, and it's the guy who dies from the plague, who like keeps the guy who sent them on their quest, Raval. He Joff names him as one of the members of the dancing scene.
Interesting.
Yeah,
and he didn't even die with them.
No, he didn't. He was not in their room.
What about the actor?
I don't think that. I don't remember if he lists the actor. I don't think he does.
Interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting. I thought that like kind of changed that whole scene for me.
Right. Yeah. Like
because initially I was just like, oh, they all died. Look at that. There we go. And I guess if I had paid more attention to the names he was listing off, maybe I'm a bad movie watcher. But it's interesting.
That is interesting. I never would have thought that. I didn't even count them at the end in the thing, which shame on me, I guess. But no, that's really cool. I had no idea.
Yeah. So I think that, us talking about the mute girl being sort of like more wholesome or more knowledgeable and wanting to help that guy. Like maybe that's why she lives, or maybe it's just not her time yet because she has more good to do.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Is if back at that castle, those two ladies are still alive and everyone else is just dead. After dinner.
Right. Yeah, like they probably have an interesting story to tell.
Like, man, we got some cleaning up to do, I guess.
Yeah, like 5 people just dropped dead around us. Somebody they're not really sure why.
Yeah.
Or they walked out the door and danced with Death or something.
Yeah, or they're not dead and they're just all having a big dance party walking down the street. But no, not really.
Yeah.
That would be stupid.
Yeah. So all in all, I mean, I totally understand why this movie has the place that it does in like film history and the film world. Like it's highly praised, like one of the best films ever made.
Yeah.
And I get it. I think it's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. I enjoyed it tremendously more the second time, and I enjoyed it the first time too. Meaning like the first time I watched it, I didn't realize how little I took from it until like I watched it this time, and I got so much more. And I think part of it just comes from being older and, like I said, having your own existential crisis every now and then, which is something I did not have whenever I was, 19, 20, 21, however old I was whenever I first watched The Seventh Seal. Mm-hmm. So I am grateful that I watched it again and will definitely not forget it anytime soon.
No, it's definitely one that like I know like I have to watch this at least like a couple more times, like throughout my life,
Like,
oh,
definitely. And even talking about
I know I'm going to want to watch.
Yeah. And even talking about it, it's such an easy movie to talk about because, I don't know. It's not boring. It moves. Every scene, something happens. These are universal themes. This movie holds up just as well today as I think it probably did in like the 50s when it came out. And I can't imagine much added to it that could make it better, right? Or it just seems timeless.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think I did read some stuff about like it coming out at the time was like it came out along the times of like the Cold War and like nuclear holocaust was on people's mind, like nuclear annihilation
right.
of the world was on people's mind, which I think there's like parallels with that and like the plague, but like I think those fears have like somewhat passed, like they're at least not like they were at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the height of like the Cold War, and it's just as relevant. Like I don't think it matters at all that like if that was an intended connection that Bergman was trying to make with the plague and nuclear war or not. Like I don't think it matters because like it's, as you said, it's timeless. Like it works. It holds up. It's just as relevant.
Right. Yeah.
Probably always will be.
I mean, these are just things that are part of the human condition, that are never going away. These questions. So, yeah, definitely. Seventh Seal.
It's great.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, anything else to add about it? I think I have one thing actually. I do want to add.
Great.
Joff is an awful juggler.
Is he?
Oh, he's so bad. He has two balls in his hand, and all he's doing is just like passing them. Like anybody can do that. I promise. If you pick up two balls and just try to like throw one in the air and like pass the other one off and throw it up and catch, like it's so easy. Like I think juggling truly starts with like three or more. And I don't know. It was distracting me all the time. It's like he's a juggler, and I'm like, that's it. That's all he's got.
Well, but, I guess at that rate, he'll never be able to provide a living for his family.
No, I guess he's also, can play the lyre and in the guitar instrument, the lyre, and sing.
That's true.
So at least he's got some other talents.
Yeah, that's true. Their song they did during the play was weird.
Yeah. It was the 1300s, times have changed in terms of music. The Beatles came around and changed that.
yeah. If it was made today, it would just be Beatles cover songs. It'd be like Across the Universe that they were performing.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I think on that note.
So, yeah, let's end our discussion on the Seventh Seal and talk about next week's film. Next week's film is Spy Number 12. My personal favorite of like the top 12 films. Are the 12 films have done so far. This is Spinal Tap by Rob Reiner.
Which is very exciting. I have not seen that movie in a very long time, and I'm super excited.
I think it's been a couple years for me, but I've seen it a bunch, and playing in a rock band for a part of my life, I definitely had to watch This is Spinal Tap and multiple times, and I just love it. Like I tend to lean towards comedy films, so it may not be as like fun to talk about and discuss on like a like human condition level like Seventh Seal was or some of the other films, but I really enjoy this film.
Yeah, me too. I've only seen it once, so I'm actually very excited to dive back into it.
Oh, I'm excited for you.
All right.
Cool. All right. So we'll move into our top 3, and this week we are going to do our top 3 chess games or chess scenes in film and TV.
Yeah, we are. So do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I'm just curious, like, how did you think about this? Did you actually think about, like, the games themselves or, like, the scenes with chess, or is it just kind of a...
I thought of memorable scenes with chess because I'm going to be honest, I don't know that many movies where chess is an integral part of the plot.
Yeah. I didn't necessarily
poker
do chess
would have been
movies.
easier. But
chess.
chess.
Sure, yeah.
was harder.
Chess is in.
So I had
chess is in film a lot. I did the same thing you did.
Yeah, I had to like look around for memorable chess scenes. So I went ahead and marked a few in case we have the same ones.
Sure, me too. So go ahead and go first.
Okay. I will go ahead and go with my number 3 here, which is the original Thomas Crown Affair with Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway. One of the most memorable chess scenes of any movie probably ever. In fact, that was the, like, besides Seventh Seal itself, that was the first movie I thought of whenever we were decided to do top 3 chess movies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I have not actually seen this movie, but I'm familiar with, like, the scene. It's like seductive.
Yeah, sexy chess.
Sexy chess, which is spoofed in Austin Powers.
Yes, it's true. The Spy Who Shagged Me.
Yeah. Which I had on my short list, but not as one that I'd ever actually list. I don't think was the Austin Powers version of that scene.
I almost put that one too. But then I was like, no,
funny.
Yeah, but it's just a spoof of the same one that I already put.
Yep.
But I remember the part where she's like stroking the king.
Yeah, and I remember he rubs like the bishop's little like tips.
yeah, it's silly.
So, anyways.
Yeah. Anyway, your number 3, please.
Yeah, my number 3. I think I'm kind of in no particular order because I don't really know how to rank.
Sure. Chess
I don't
scenes.
know how to rank these. I think I'm going to go with Blazing Saddles, which is a bit of a chess scene. It's more for like the way they get to the chess scene is my favorite part. It's when Gene Wilder wakes up in the drunk pit and the sheriff is talking to him and he's like, all right, well, what do you want to do? And Gene Wilder says, well, we could play chess or we could screw. And the sheriff goes, well, let's play chess. And then the next scene they're playing chess, and that's when they get into the conversation when they learn who each other is. And remember when Gene Wilder says he's like the Waco kid or whatever, he uses the chess piece to like try to get the sheriff to grab it out of his hand, or to see who can grab it first. He's not grab it out of his hand. He has the sheriff put his hands on either side, right on either side of the chess piece, and try to grab it before the Waco kid can. So they play chess a little bit. I think it's also the scene where they're like smoking pot. And anyways, I like Blazing Saddles a lot. I think it's really funny. And chess may not be too integral to that scene, but it kind of is.
Yeah, why not? It's certainly in the scene, which was the only requirement.
Absolutely.
The next one I was actually going to put as a movie that I am not really a big fan of, but I have seen it, and I do remember this really crazy chess scene, and that is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone, if you're not in America. I think that's the one. Anyway, in it they have a big chess match on like a life-size board with like life-size chess pieces, and they have to like move them.
Yeah, and they smash each other up, I think, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just wanted them to.
Yeah, maybe. So anyway, one of the Harry Potter movies, chess.
Absolutely. Okay.
Number 2.
Sure, yeah, I'm not that big on those movies either, so I don't really remember what happens in it, but life-size chess where the pieces like walk around and move, and hopefully, if memory serves me correctly, beat the crap out of each other is awesome.
Yeah, I remember it was a cool scene, and it was cool special effects, and everything looked good. I just can't remember if it's the first one or the second one. I think it's the first one.
Okay, next one. This one sticks out to me, and maybe it's just because it's in one of my favorite shows, but there's a chess game played on a computer in Lost.
Oh, nice.
And it's when they go to the Flame Dharma station, and Locke discovers this computer that's playing chess, and the guy who's in that Dharma station, who's kind of a Russian guy, he tells him that the computer can't be beaten. And so finally Locke he gets obsessed with it, and he starts playing it, and he finally beats it. And when he beats it, it opens up a new menu that says like, it's like, oh, would you like to request like a pallet drop? or would you like to, try to communicate with someone off island, which is a big deal in Lost, and he tries to, but as he tries to do that, they realize like all the satellites are broken, and before he can like try to repair them, the Russian guy like starts fighting him and stuff, and I think the computer gets destroyed, or I don't know, they can't use it again for some reason. Oh, the whole station blows up.
Yeah, spoilers for Lost.
But, yeah, I don't know what season that's in, but it's way into the show.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I
have no idea what
Lost.
season it is, but rest assured, it's very far into the show. So I spoiled something very far into the show for you.
Yeah, I love Lost, and that was a really exciting moment when like he beats that chess thing, and you're like, oh, this might be when they can communicate.
I have a feeling that every one of these top 3 countdowns we do from now on, you're going to try to find a way to stick Lost in there.
I ought to.
I think you've done it twice now.
Lost that's the beauty of Lost, like that it did so many things that like I might actually be able to do it.
All right. So my next one, I was going to go ahead and say The Thing. Yeah, this is when.
Oh man,
when
that was going to be one of my next one too, but I'll do a different one.
Oh, nerds. Sorry, man. Well, it's a great scene. Kurt Russell, in all his bearded glory, is in his cabin playing chess with a really old school 80s computer. And and then loses and pours his coffee directly into it.
Yep, that is one way to defeat a computer at chess.
Yeah, because he's a sore loser, it would seem. So, anyway, I won't go on and on at great detail about the plot of The Thing or the scene around it, but if you haven't seen John Carpenter's The Thing starring Kurt Russell, do that. What are you doing?
Yeah, you should. I don't remember how early that happens in the movie, but doesn't it kind of like foreshadow what happens towards the end of the movie in a way?
It could. I don't want to spoil the thing.
I don't want to spoil it either, but whatever. I probably did.
But whatever, we kind of did. Doesn't matter. See The Thing.
Yeah.
Chess.
Okay, so my last one, I don't think you can make a list without including the Seventh Seal, but I also feel like that's kind of boring.
I know. I almost included it too because how can you not? It's like the chess scene of all movies.
Yeah, absolutely. So honorable, actually above all, number 1, Seventh Seal above all of these other ones. But I think for fun we're including other ones. So my third and final one that's not Seventh Seal is Blade Runner.
Nice. I had that one on my list too. Yeah,
the guy who helps build the robots and the owner of Tyrell, the owner of the company that makes like the androids have like an ongoing chess game, and that's how the androids use him to get into the room with Tyrell towards the end of the movie. And I guess I won't say what happens, but just that whole movie's cool, and it uses chess in a cool way.
It certainly does. Clearly cool enough to be on both of our lists. Only I decided not to put it in the top 3 because I feared and suspected that you might do the same thing. Because when I was Googling chess scenes, there was only a handful of memorable ones. And I was like, I bet he's running across the same ones I am.
No, probably. Did you have Blazing Saddles?
No.
Came across that one?
I ran across it, but I did not include it.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, I guess that is it for this week's show.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed our discussion of the Seventh Seal.
I know I did.
Yeah.
I might watch it again soon. Like, I know my girlfriend didn't get to watch it with me, and I think she should see it.
My girlfriend did watch it with me, and she was, I think, surprised at how much she enjoyed it. I don't want to speak for her, but I'm going to.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have her on when we, in like 30 years, when we finish going through the collection and start over.
There we go. Yeah, she can be on round 2.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we hope you enjoyed it, and please give us any feedback, comments, suggestions, thoughts, anything that you think we could be doing better, or worse.
And we'll get to how to contact us here in a second. But first, we want to thank you for listening, and thank Jake Wagner Russell for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch, like hopscotch but with a B. And as Mike said, and you want to give us feedback of any sort, review us on iTunes. That would be great. And if you want to contact us, you can do so on Facebook at facebook.com/casuallycriterion podcast. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcriterion, or you can email us directly at casuallycriterion@gmail.com. So I guess I'll talk to you next week.
All right, take it easy, man.
Bye.
Bye.